I've got my emotional support matcha here. Let's give it a little stir. And we're gonna talk about my situationship. The sun is doing that thing again where it's ricocheting off of the building in front of me. So I am blind, and if there are 10,000 shadows on me, that's not really any of my business, but I am sorry if it's distracting. Something to take the edge off right here. Where do I even begin with this? I feel like a situationship is a canon event for a girl. It is literally the relationship version of an ego death because it is just so humbling. And I almost came out of my dating saga unscathed by a situationship because I didn't have one until 2 years ago. And while I do admit it needed to happen in order to get me to where I am today, I'm not sure you could pay me enough money to go back and relive it. And that's not even because it was all that bad. It just sucks every last bit of energy you have from you. I always get nervous talking about things like this because I don't want the person I'm talking about to see this, but also whatever. It was 2 years ago. Fine. So let's go back to the beginning. I met him on a dating app, which again, dating apps are where dreams go to die. And I don't even know I was super compelled to match with him because nothing was super special about his profile, but he was relatively cute. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. And I think the thing that really captivated me, which it always does, was we had really good banter. I cannot stress enough that banter is not enough to make a relationship or anything work. So take that as you will. But there's just something about like kikiing with someone right off the bat that makes you think that you're in love. And I remember before the date, I was texting my friend being like, oh my God, I'm dreading this so much. This is gonna be so awkward and so boring. Like I don't wanna go. And he was like, you know what? You never know what's gonna happen. You should just go. Okay, bye son. Nice seeing you. I guess it's gonna be dark from now on. Hopefully you can still see me. Anyways, my friend was like, what do you have to lose? If you hate this guy, you never see him again. And if you like him, then maybe you will see him again. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go. I really wanted to cancel. I cannot tell you how much I wanted to cancel. Anyway, also looking back, our first date was literally on April Fool's Day. The universe was laughing from the start. We went on a coffee date and walked along the seawall, and it was actually such a good date. Probably one of the best first dates I've been on, and that really freaked me out because like I said, I expected going into it that there was gonna be no vibes whatsoever. I was meeting up with my friends later that day, and I remember they were stalking me on Find My Friends being like, oh my God, I think she's still on the date with this person like 3 hours after the date had started. They were blowing up my phone being like, either you've been kidnapped and you're dead on the street somewhere, or it's going really well. And I hate to admit, but it was going really well. We clicked immediately. Again, our banter and our conversation was so good. And I left feeling really impressed by him because he was so interesting and very different in terms of his interests and the things that he had done in his life, like his experiences, than the people that I knew or the people that I had dated. So I was very intrigued. Of course, my friend was rubbing it in my face, being like, I told you so. And I was like, don't at me. Not long after that, we had our second day, our third day, etc. And we started hanging out probably a few times a week. We were spending a lot of time together. Now, I will note that I feel like the energy I brought into the beginning of this relationship was very much so I'm looking for something casual. My last video I was kind of talking about, I was in my single era. I wasn't looking for anything serious. And I still felt that way even after having a really good date with this guy. And I think that piece is really important because the energy you come in at the beginning is essentially what you're gonna get at the end. There's no one to blame but myself. I came in saying I wanted something casual and I left being like, wow, I can't believe he wanted something so casual. Like, hello, you asked for it yourself. The whole law of attraction thing, I completely believe in. If you are putting out that energy, that's what you're gonna get back, and you can't be upset when it ends up being exactly what you asked for, you know? A lot of our hangouts were very off the cuff, spur of the moment. Our first couple of dates were actual sit down dates, but after that, it was very just like spontaneous, very, I'm in your neighborhood, do you wanna go get coffee? Hey, I'm not doing anything right now. Do you want to come over and hang out? And at the time I was like, okay, this is great. This is very casual, very laissez-faire. And so I wasn't really seeing it for like the flag that it was, in the sense that this man wasn't a planner and not somebody who could commit to making plans far in advance. As my feelings started to develop for him, by the end, it really felt like I was constantly waiting for him to choose to hang out with me versus having those like committed, planned out moments or dates or quality time. And I feel like that really affected me negatively because I was constantly trying to make myself available in case he wanted to hang out with me. And as someone who likes to identify as a strong, independent woman, that really grinds my gears that I was doing that. I feel like the first signs of potential red flags were that he was the type of person that overcommitted in terms of what he would say and then fall through in terms of his actions. And that started kind of at the beginning, even in terms of the ways that he would describe himself. Now, I'm not saying he was an an outright liar, but I do think he liked to fluff things up with his words or how he would describe things. And the reality of them was similar to what he said, but just like 1 degree less amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I remember he would tell me what his job was, but he was just telling me like the industry that he worked in, but his actual job was not what he said it was. And at the time, I feel like I remember gaslighting myself, being like, no, he did tell me that, but I don't actually think he did. You know what's crazy about it is I remember my dad asking me questions about him because I was telling him, oh, like I met this guy, I'm going on dates with this guy, here are some things about him. And my dad was asking like probing questions, I guess, being like, oh, okay, well, if he does this, like, what did he do for school, or like where does he work, and like all these things. And I couldn't answer them because I didn't really have that information. And at the time I was getting really defensive because I was like, Dad, what's with the detective work? Okay, like, how was you a detective? But I think what my dad was trying to decipher was like, are these things true? Like, it's sounding a little too good to be true. And I was getting really defensive because I was like, why are you coming for this guy that like I kind of fancy and like have just started seeing? And also it's like not that deep. But if I were to really psychoanalyze myself, I feel like the reason I was so defensive is because I was worried he was right, that the guy I was seeing really wasn't as great as I thought he was, or that he was kind of fluffing things up and not being 100% on the nose with the things he was telling me. And that made me really uncomfortable and felt like I couldn't trust my intuition. And a perfect example of him overcommitting from the things he was saying versus what he was actually doing was my birthday. He like randomly decided to tell me that he thought to purchase me a pair of shoes for my birthday. And I was like, okay, that's really nice. And I remember being like, oh my God, that's such a sweet gift. And those shoes never came. Like, they never came. And he had only ever said like, I thought about getting these shoes for you. Paint me fucking confused, because why would you openly disclose that you thought about getting something and then never did? And the thing is, we weren't dating. So I was like very much in the vein of like, you do not have to get me a gift. So it was even stranger that he would openly say that he thought about getting me a gift, which was already unexpected, and then didn't follow through with that. Just don't say anything. I never expected it anyway. I literally told you, don't get me a gift. I didn't want to make it a big deal, like nothing. It just like honestly boggles my mind. I'm like, why tell me you wanted to get me something that you didn't get me? Like, my brain hurts. It's like that freaking math meme, the like equation meme. That's how I felt. But at the same time, I like felt compelled to thank it. Like, thank you for your thoughts. Anyways, so there were just like little things like that, which I should have held on to a little bit more dearly in terms of like flags. But at the same time, I feel like because I had convinced myself this was just going to be something casual, that I didn't need to really like over psychoanalyze anything or like invest in anything until I get basically a hey girly text from my friend. And she was like, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but the guy you're seeing is still active on the dating apps and just like matched with somebody that I know. She was like, I don't know if you're exclusive or whatnot, but you've been hanging out a lot. I know you are starting to like him. And from what you've told me, he seems to be in the vein of telling you that he very much likes you. He's very invested in you. And that's what I felt as well. I didn't feel like we had to have the exclusivity talk, because the way he was talking to me and the things that he was saying to me were very much like, I don't have the apps anymore. Like, I'm just focused on you, even though we want to be casual, whatever. Like, that was the vibe. And I would also say that the way he was talking to me was very much like, I know you want to be casual, like me. He's saying me, you want to be casual, but he was kind of talking to me as like I would be down to be something more. Again, hearsay. Did he say those words verbatim? But I know the girlies know that like guys will say things to make you feel a certain type of way, and then you're convinced that is the truth. And then they'll turn around and be like, I never said that. So my friend texts me this, and I immediately like feel sick to my stomach. And that made me realize, okay, maybe you actually are developing feelings for this person. Ew, disgusting, gross. And obviously I was disappointed and not excited to hear that he was still in the apps, still talking to people, still active, because then it just made me feel like an option or like somebody who was keeping the seat warm. And then at the same time, I was like, well, I can't really be upset because we've never had the exclusivity talk, but I was under the assumption from how we were interacting that that was the case. But I guess you can never assume things or whatever. And so from that, I ended up deciding, you know what, I'm gonna have a sit down conversation with him. and I'm gonna tell him I know that he's still on the apps and that I would like to have the exclusivity talk because I'm now in a place where I do want to be working towards something. I do have feelings for him, and just to like gauge how he was feeling, I do want to make a video at some point kind of like talking through the exclusivity talk and what I think the best way to go about it is, because I've had this talk a couple times, so not a newbie over here. Anyways, the conversation went really well, and he was like, listen, the only reason I was still looking is because I was under the impression that you wanted to keep things really casual between us. If I had it my way, like, you would be my girlfriend. That's what he said to me, okay? He verbatim said like, oh, I want you to be my girlfriend. I thought you wanted to keep things really casual, and that's why. And I was like, that's totally fair, because I did say that. And how was he supposed to know that my feelings had changed throughout the couple of months that we have been seeing each other? So it was a really good conversation. I felt really reaffirmed after that. And at least I was like, okay, we're making moves, but not yet like fully committing to each other, because I wasn't ready to do that either. It was still very soon. I was still a little bit like fresh out of my breakup and still in my single era. So I left that conversation feeling happy about how it went down. I will also note that we had plans to go to a wedding together, one of his best friend's weddings, and that was like already a big step that he invited me to really, really early on. So again, I was under the impression this man was obsessed with me, okay? Everything he did was giving, I'm obsessed with you, but at the same time, all talk, no follow through, okay? Didn't go to that wedding, I'll tell you that right now. Now, the thing about me is, as soon as I like you and I'm invested in you, I will literally give you the sun, the moon, the earth, the stars. Nothing could hold me back from sacrificing literally everything to give you the whole world, which is something I'm learning to not do anymore because it comes with a large price tag. We're working on not doing that immediately from the get-go. I just assume the best in everyone, and I just want to like take care of people, but not everyone deserves that generosity, and that is what I'm coming to terms with. Anyways, after we have this exclusivity talk, we're doing well for probably like a couple weeks until everything hits the fan, and this is the falling out of the situationship, okay? On the day that it ended, I hadn't heard from him all day, which is very unusual behavior, so I was texting him a few times being like, is everything okay? Should I be worried? I was like messaging his friends being like, hey, have you heard from him? What's going on? And I'm already a pretty anxious person, but I was so anxious this day. I feel like I was really in my head. I was very much like, oh my God, what is going on? Everything's crazy. And actually looking back, I was anxious throughout our entire situationship. And I just attributed that to me being an anxious person. But now that I'm in the relationship that I'm in and out of that situation, I can look back and be like, that wasn't normal. That amount of insecurity, of trying to be interesting so that he doesn't get tired of you, of holding all of that time open in case he wants to hang out with you. Like, that is not normal behavior, and it's unfortunate that it took me that long to realize, but at the same time, I will never be making that mistake again. When he finally answers me after like a full day of basically ghosting me, he essentially tells me that he's been like super stressed with a personal situation and like can't even really tell me anything that's going on. Like, he's being super avoidant, super nonverbal. I'm sure he was dealing with a lot and his mental was like taking the toll, but at the same time, I just find it really hard to come to terms with the fact that somebody cannot communicate, especially at our big age. So essentially, we had this really abrupt ending where he was like, I'm not sure like what's going on. I need to figure this out. I can't talk to you anymore. Don't call me. Like, it was just really abrupt and random. And I felt really bad because I was like, oh my God, you're so stressed. I want to like offer to help you and all these things. And I will say his one redeeming quality is that he didn't let me help him. And I truly think that that was his way of being like, I can't drag you down with me because this is my problem and I just like cannot put this on you. And I truly thank him for that, because I could have been dragged straight down to the depths of hell. So at the end of it all, he made the one right decision to shut me out. But at the time, I remember being like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Like, what the fuck just happened? I was so confused, guys. When you're anxious and confused, your brain is just like, what the hell happened? You think it's you. You start like looking back at the last time you talked and being like, oh my God, did I say something or do something weird? I need you to stop that right now, because it's not you, it is them. My relationship with this guy was the perfect analogy of cup theory. If you don't know about cup theory, it's basically like everyone has a certain size cup, and that cup determines how much love you can give and receive based off of how much personal growth you have, how much security you feel, what point you are in your life, etc. And I was at the point where my cup had grown enough because I felt really secure about myself. I felt really good about where I was in life, and I was ready to share that with somebody else. And so my cup was up here, baby. It was a good, healthy, fat cup. Meanwhile, he was in a very different place in his life. He was still trying to figure things out. He was still very scrambling, not sure what he wanted to do with his life. Didn't have capacity to pour into my cup, let alone be able to carry the amount that I was pouring from my cup. So the analogy is that if he had a small cup, he's giving me everything he has, but it's filling my cup like this much. I'm giving him everything I have, and I'm absolutely drowning him. And that is exactly the situation that happened. I feel like half the reason why me and my current boyfriend work out so perfectly is because our cup size is the same. We are pouring into each other as much as we are receiving from the other person. And when things line up like that, it is so beautiful, so magical. And when they don't line up like that, it is so destructive, so disheartening, and so anxiety inducing. I can't even describe it. I feel like the weight that situationship had on my brain at all times. I was never not thinking about it. I was wondering when he was going to text me next, wondering what our future would look like. It was just crammed into my head at all times. I couldn't focus on anything else. It had honestly just taken over my life, and in such a short amount of time. And I feel like I was using his attention as validation for myself. So when he wasn't giving me attention or wasn't giving me what I expected, I was feeling shittier and shittier and shittier about myself. And that is never how you should feel in a partnership or in any sort of relationship that you have. And the universe was absolutely telling me, this is not the situation for you. You need to get out while you can. He was giving me all of the signs I needed to not pursue things. My ego and my pride just didn't want to let it go, which is why I genuinely believe situationships are an ego death, because you have to let all of that shit go. And the kicker is that his best friend was actually the one to tell me, you need to walk away, Sam. You're too good for him. And I've never had somebody's best friend who has never met me, doesn't know me, doesn't owe me anything, tell me that. You better take that and run. I was like, you know what? I'm out of there. You don't gotta tell me twice. Say less. As soon as he said that, I was like, I woke up. I snapped out of it. The spell was gone, and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I devoting everything to this basically stranger who's making me feel so anxious with his avoidant attachment style? Honestly, the story is sometimes hard for me to talk about because it's really hard to articulate how much of a hold it had on my mental and how much I genuinely was so worried about this person and how I really wanted to help this person. But this person was in no place to be helped, and me contributing to that was not going to help either of us. It was just going to drag us both down. And what's funny is at the very beginning, one of our first conversations was that every time he dated someone or had a casual fling with someone, they ended up finding the love of their lives and getting married right after him. And at the time that he told me that, I was just kind of laughing it off, thinking that was a funny coincidence. But super shortly after him, I met my now boyfriend, and we're 100% endgame, moved in together. He is my husband. So it's crazy to think that at least 3 people that he has dated have ended up finding the love of their life right after dating him. There's something crazy going on, okay? Something crazy. It's also wild thinking about the fact that this was a 4-month little blip, and yet it had such a big impact on the rest of my life. I remember feeling so down in the dumps after things had ended with him. It honestly almost felt harder to deal with than my 3-year-long breakup, which is probably attributed to a couple things. Number one, I feel like because it was so short, you weren't able to fully see anything through. So it almost felt like we were giving up before we had really gotten into the meat of it. And number two, because of the condensed timeline, you're almost going from honeymoon phase to heartbreak. So it's just a very steep decline versus a longer relationship. You kind of start up here and slowly make your way down here. So by the time you get down here, it feels a lot less jarring and a lot less abrupt. And despite it being super abrupt and feeling like we didn't have much closure, I feel like the nail in the coffin that ended up giving me a lot of closure was a couple months later when I had just started seeing my now boyfriend. I ran into my situationship. And I remember all of that anxiety came bubbling right back up. The moment I laid eyes on him, I had the worst anxiety. I felt sick to my stomach, and we had a totally normal interaction. Nothing crazy happened. It was just amicable and whatever. But I remember the feeling inside was crippling. On the same day, I saw my now boyfriend, and this huge wash of calm and peace just floated over me. It was as if that anxiety prior never existed, and I have never felt that from another person. He was able to completely rewire my mind, like never experienced that before in my life. It was crazy, and it was so sobering to be like, okay, this is what it should feel like, okay? This is still a stranger. I don't know him that well, and yet he's still able to put me at such calm and such peace versus this guy over here is literally triggering my fight or flight. Yeah, it's becoming a lot more clear. Honestly, I'm exhausted from telling that story. Even just reliving it in my brain drains me, but it taught me so much about myself in a small amount of time, and it forced me to be really uncomfortable in walking away from something that I knew wasn't good for me, but I really wanted to make work, which I think was like the final boss of what I needed to learn before entering a really healthy long-term relationship. So all to say, it was an experience that needed to happen. I learned a lot from it. I hope that that person is doing well, not in my life, and ultimately it led me to where I am today, which I could not be more grateful for. So yeah, I would do it again just to get to where I am right now. That story kind of brings me to the end of my single era. We will start talking about my current relationship, how we met, all the things I needed, non-negotiables going into my next relationship. That is all to come in episodes to come. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, please feel free to subscribe, turn on the little notification bell if you want, if you're a keener like that. And I hope to see you in my next debrief. Bye!